Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by PHAccelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, stories and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out the articles, videos and more at PHAccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered and contribute to the community forum, and of course, attend the weekly online Global Passive House Happy Hour. Now, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh and I'm coming to you from Auckland.
And I'm Zach Semke in Seattle. How's it going, Matthew?
It's good. It's a bit up and down, pretty chilly here at the moment. We're just been out for a walk Saturday morning for me right now as I'm recording this. And we were in single digits Celsius. And I noticed that the Christchurch forecast was down to -1 Celsius.
Ooh, chilly
overnight. So it's getting a little bit chilly out there. But I do notice that there are some other extremes happening kind of all around. And I can't help but be kind of shocked about all the flooding that's going on around the world at the moment. It's kind of crazy.
No, it really is. It is crazy. Yeah, we're having just gorgeous Seattle summer weather. This is like what we expect from the summer in Seattle. Seattle, we have so much cloudy weather and gray, drizzly days that our bargain traditionally has been that we get to look forward to the summer, and it's this amazing thing. And just perfect and beautiful. And that's what we're experiencing right now. Meanwhile, just over the mountains, just maybe, 80 miles away, there are all sorts of forest fires and the wind is blowing eastward. So it's all blowing to the Midwest and to the East Coast. So the smoke from our trees is reaching the lungs of people on our colleagues in Philadelphia and New York and Chicago right now. So just another reminder of our interconnectedness as we deal with the climate problem and also the climate solution. So
yeah, that's right. And as we've talked about on the show before, the importance of resilience and accepting that changes are happening at the same time as building better to reduce those impacts. And there's I was privileged to see some really interesting research, had a bit of a preview of it, some very smart people out of Otago University down in Dunedin. Research isn't published yet, but it's basically looking at the specific New Zealand case of the winter peak of electricity demand and running a few different scenarios of what that would look like under the current building code, looking at renovations of all the existing housing stock, and then also what would happen if from today all new houses were built to the Passive House standard. And it looked at two things. It looked at the overall energy consumption and therefore the carbon emissions result of that, but also the peak load. Anyway, we won't go into too much detail today, but that would be a fascinating topic to talk about, because the bottom line is, as we probably already know in this community, that the benefits of building to a much higher standard across the board are just so significant. So our challenge is to convince people of the benefits of doing that.
Indeed. Yeah, I can't wait to see the study.
Yeah. All right. Hey, well, let's get into this week's episode. But before we do, we've got some people to thank for bringing us the Passive House podcast.
We do. So everything we do at the Accelerator comes thanks to the support of our sponsors. And so a big, big thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxtingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Rockwool North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsor is SIGA, and our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Awesome. Thank you to all of those fantastic sponsors. And as always, thank you to you, the listeners, and the great community out there who help make this what it is, not just this podcast, but also the whole Passive House Accelerator community. A big part of that community is Mark Wille, he kind of needs no introduction, but I feel like it does justice to give him one, because he's such a prominent figure, and he's been involved in this scene and a real advocate for sustainability in the building sector for quite a long time. So I caught up with Mark recently, and as I've also had, we've had Sean on the show and Prudence and some others, I'm really interested in sharing some of the backstories of these personalities of the show. So Mark is, like I say, he's a pretty well-known personality of the Passive House Accelerator. He's co-host of the Construction Tech series, and also a regular and pretty active participant of the weekly Global Happy Hour. He also co-hosts Building Science Friday Live, but his passion for Passive House and building doesn't end with being on screen or on the podcast or live broadcasts. He's also a board member and strategic advisor of the Illinois Green Alliance, a senior policy advisor of the Tiny House Alliance USA. He's a board member of Passive House Alliance US, and still has a bit of time to work on his own building projects. His day job is, as he describes it, carpenter and storyteller at Tstud, where he's helping the team there develop and market some pretty exciting new engineered high-performance timber products. As I say, Mark's been a long-time advocate for sustainability in the building sector, and he brings a wealth of experience, passion, and some fun to the Passive House community. And I started out by asking Mark how he got into building in the first place. Well, great to have you on the show, Mark. Thanks for your time. Let's start out going back in history a little bit. And how did you get involved in the building industry in the first place?
So it started at a young age. I grew up in a small town about 25 minutes south of Chicagoland in Midwest U.S. And my father was the manager and buyer for a lumber yard that was a whole 2 blocks from my house. So you can imagine a kid on a small town bike with his dad 2 blocks away. I would go to the lumber yard every day and, touch and climb and lift and beg, borrow for anything I can get from them. So my full start in the industry was really as a small youth with access to a large lumber yard. And I knew how to get in and out of there, even though they were closed.
Nice. It's interesting that the first word you said there was touch. And that's something I associate with wood, and I've seen it as well when people are in a finished house, or I remember going on a tour of an LVL factory, and everyone just reaches out and touches wood. There's something about it.
It's the environment has always made my eyes go really big and very wide, and then I go over to it, with the flurry of questions out of my mouth, and yeah, I want to pick it up if I can, right? I mean, if it's too big, I still want to struggle and see, but I want to touch it. I want to feel it. I want all my senses to be around it. And, being in a lumber yard, those senses are incredibly heightened, right? Because wood has that strong odor. And I don't know how you could resist touching it. It's just like, I guess it's part of my makeup, eh?
Well, I think it's not just you. I think it's our nature, because it is part of nature. It's where we've been around trees, we've been around wood, and
there's something special about the feel, like you said, the smell, the look. Just a very amazing material and a product. So you've worked with wood for most of your career. You went on to become a builder?
I did. And something just came up that was a trigger, Matthew. Because you brought my heightened awareness up to the touching. So I was remembering those experiences in the yard. And at the same point, I'm remembering going to, what do you call those? Landscape supply place. And the same over energetic kid put his hand on everything. And I got crazy sick because my hand was touching fertilizers and pesticides. So, based on what you brought out there, my reflection is at a young age, I was tuned in to natural and I was tuned in to chemicals and what I don't want to be around. So, I think it's easy to show how that helped shape my life, and long before I was a builder, I was a renovator. So in Chicago, there's a massive stock of existing buildings, right? There's not enough workforce to manage them, and there's truly a never-ending supply. So we would go into 2-unit, 4-unit, 6-unit, even 8-unit buildings and salvage, right? What was needed to be salvaged, discover what needed to be reworked. And the buildings are 100 years old, right, on the average. So you're not finding any insulation, right? All the strategies we know in the building science world have developed from those great craftsmen. And the building stock is wonderful. So it didn't take a lot to alter them. A lot of it was cosmetic, but adding the insulation and changing the ventilation was you can imagine, a big part of our workload.
Yeah. When did you go from being a general contractor to wanting to focus on what we might call high performance or healthy buildings?
So the years would escape me. Time and logistics are not my strong suit, but I could remember people and addresses and everything we did. So, you work for different companies and for your own companies, and sometimes I classify it as a world of outgrowing your roommates. And so I was in this big theory of being like my cousins and uncles and getting more guys and growing a bigger crew and all this stuff. And the people I worked with were never interested in that. And I later learned that that's not a bad place to be. But and in through that, there was a supply house in Chicago called Greenmaker. And it was revolutionary because they were offering these, at the time, it seemed like a far out concept, like no VOC finishes and no added urea formaldehyde materials. And it just seemed kind of like far out. And so I started buying materials from them and getting along with the owners. And then we had a slowdown on our workload. And I navigated into those waters and started selling materials for them and classifying what materials that we actually shouldn't be using.
And would this have been, approximately 20 years ago?
Yep. Probably 16, maybe.
Right. But still fairly early days in the general awareness of things like VOCs.
That's about right. Yeah. it was pretty wonderful, right? Because you had the insulations that you could touch, right? And as from a guy who used to put together walls and have itchy arms, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, right.
And it works.
Yeah. So transitioning away from fiberglass, that sort of thing, to more natural materials.
We happened to be a distributor for, at the time it was called Roxel and later Rockwool. I don't know how we got the distributorships we got, but we did. And boy, people would come from neighboring states with trucks and they'd drive away with, tarps and everything holding the insulation on there. And they were just kids in a candy store like, thank you so much for being here. It was the advent of a lot of it was the sequence of green and the many definitions of sustainability, and then the search for energy efficiency, and certainly the weatherization programs were exploding.
So you were working as a contractor or builder, but also doing some material supply. Is that you're sort of adding that into your services?
Yeah, and then basically everyone that comes in the store needed a contractor. So all my friends that still had all their GC works, I said, hey, look, you guys, here's easy projects, right? The people already know their materials. They've already made their selections. What a benefit. Just do the install, right? Be a business person, run the quotes and get it done. And so all my friends got to do everything from the countertops to the walls to all this stuff. And then, to this day, they still practice that, like it transformed their careers as well.
And were you running a team at this stage? Did you have a crew of your own people?
At this stage, I was kind of moonlighting into my next GC business. Yes. So the next business was focused more on the fabrication and woodworking, more for commercial restaurants and whatnot. I wanted a tailored niche, and I partnered with a gentleman by the name of McKinley Wells, and every night and every weekend we just knocked it down. He was someone like myself, very talented, very creative, but didn't require a lot of sleep, right? We could be there at 5 a.m, and we could be leaving there at 1 a.m. Where our facility was, that there was no neighbors to speak of. And so we would bang those machines pretty loud all hours of the night, and then go back and do a regular day gig.
Yeah. When did you first hear about Passive House?
So it was in those days, gentlemen. So because a couple folks, there's I'm not a name dropper, but they're fond memories. One guy was named Tim Hepner. One was George Sullivan. One was Bob Chomko, and we were all involved in the Center for Green Technology, and the program of Chicago had a green homes program, very similar to the early days of LEED, what they had with the USGBC, and George had an ability to talk, and sometimes when you work at a green supply store, there's a lot of dead hours, and so you'd get caught on a phone call, and he was so passionate about it, and lo and behold, I got introduced to Mark Miller and Tom Bassett-Dilley, and everyone got together and created the Passive House Alliance Chicago, which is a PHAccelerator subgroup, and so that's where we started meeting. We got Wille to sponsor a location, and we started meeting every third Wednesday of the month. We would have a meeting to figure out how everyone could hear about Passive House, and and then someone would present, and like Ken Levinson fly in from New York, and I'm going to talk to you guys about membranes and smart membranes, and everyone was like, "Tell me more."
Because had you built any or come across any passive house buildings at this point?
So at this point, no one in the group had. Tom Bassadilli, of course, took off on a real crusade and got a lot of great projects from it. But Chicago was and is a passive house desert. It sometimes I think we're all in our silos and we're used to talking about what we do, but we neglect to say what's not working. And the truth is, it's still not working. And PHAC, has their offices there and all the outreach of the many organizations that do it, and it's still a bit of a desert. So there's no finger pointing in that statement at all. I think the culture is just not aware of it, and the municipalities and the way our code system works, they're not able to quite comprehend these third-party certifications that are so beneficial. While Mayor Daley was around, he brought LEED to all the municipal buildings, and so that third party really worked. But like many politically based cities, when there's a change of guard, you just tend to do different than your predecessor, and we stopped being the greenest city. It's like you don't check that box and then move out. You check that box and then you make more boxes. And Chicago neglected to do that. And we bid on many passive houses, but we never got one in Chicago.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting mentality of just kind of throwing out the work of the predecessor simply because it was the work of the predecessor, and getting into this sort of silly game of it's not even one-upping it. It's just complete reversal, which is so disruptive for the industry, rather than having a progression to say, you went this far, well, I'm going to go further, instead of it going in the complete opposite direction is really unhelpful for everyone.
We always state, I think it was Doug Farr that uses this analogy, that people need an example. And when they see the example, they could replicate it. And for me, that example for the many cities in the U.S. is the step code in British Columbia. I'm enamored by it. I think at the end of the day, people live in a house for 6 to 10 years, right? Let's just say that's the number. So that means that when you build your house, you're building it to today's standards. And I'm baffled that you're not building it to the standard that you plan on selling it at. It almost seems like we're doing the opposite of what we know is right. And not intentionally. I believe it's a large mistake.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the step code is inspiring, but it's also just makes sense. It's one of those things where you look at it and it's like, well, of course. Why isn't everyone doing projecting out 10 years and saying this is where the plan's going to be? I know that the political reality of getting that implemented and locked in is challenging, and that's where British Columbia and all the people involved have done some amazing work, which we've looked into a little bit of that on the show. So people should go back and listen to some previous episodes about that.
And of the same premise, like the regular code is updated every 3 years, right? At least in the States, like, 2009, 2012, 2015, 2018. So it's coming. So if the IECC and the IRC and the IBC and all that work in those ways, why not pull from that example of of BC. That way, not everyone has to spend. Every city doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. We know what the wheel is, and say, hey, in 10 years we want to be here, and then in 10 years we want to be here, and now let's start focusing on real problems.
Do you remember what it was about Passive House that either A, attracted you, and B, was there anything that sort of confused you or concerned you coming from, because you've been sort of in the green building kind of space and doing, obviously had some sort of intuitive motivation for sustainability there. What was it that attracted you to Passive House, and were there any concerns that you had about what you were hearing when you first heard about it?
Yeah, so I think in some ways, I think a little bit differently than what they say to say. So they say don't lead with the energy efficiency, right? Because people can afford energy, and for me, I was always baffled by that, because when I heard that you can, the word model a building that phrase had never come across my ears. And then when they say you could project the consumption of the operation of the building, right? We're using different words today, but I'm trying to remember those old words. I was like, oh, so now you can actually have a budget. And I immediately went to the fact, wouldn't all real estate companies, banks, and appraisers base the funding off of the budget, not just the cost of the building? And, half the room looks at you like, no, can't do that, right? And I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's the whole reason funding is based on, is budgets. And then here's the magic one that I think a lot of folks remember. I felt I was duped because I was told that you could seal this building and you could pour all this insulation in the different areas and you could get these amazing windows from Europe, and all it would take to heat it was a hairdryer. And first I was like, well, I hate the sound of a hairdryer. I've never used one. I don't know why someone want to heat a house with a hairdryer. And secondly, I found out that you actually don't heat the building with a hairdryer. These days they tend to heat it, with electrical VRF systems and heat pumps. But you would go later on to all these discussions of, we need an ERV. No, we need an HRV. No, we have to add ventilation. And I was like, wait a minute, what about the hairdryer story? So I remember that pretty vividly. So for me, it was like, okay, to have a green building, you need a bunch of bike racks, and to have a passive house, you need a hairdryer. That was my short brain. But the idea, there was I believe it was the German consulate came, and they had a demo unit place downtown Chicago where you could experience the inside of a space. And just knowing that you could be in a quiet space, right? Chicago's loud. It's just a loud city. There's a lot of people. And just that offering what a library offers you for a house, to me, that seemed like peace.
Yeah. So true. And it's so hard to take photos of that, because that's what a lot of real estate is based on, is the visual aspect of homes and of course the location. But it comes back to the feel of these places, which incorporates the sound, but also the temperature, and there's just a stillness and a peace in some ways about a home that's really well crafted and is working properly.
As a contractor and a wood guy, I'd be sitting through these meetings, and all these folks, these architects and these engineers that I knew, they went on to get their CPHCs and CPHDs and all the different things, PHI and FIAS, and they're talking woofy this and all that, and I was just kind of giggling because I just want to focus on the wall. I want a really nice wall. I'll do what you're asking on the slab. That makes sense. I could learn that. Oh, the roof. Oh, that's a piece of cake. I could do that. But they were explaining it like the cockpit of an engine, and this is how the plane flies, and this is how it's made, and this and that. And when I used to explain projects to a client, I would explain it like the destination of the flight and the beach that you're going to walk and the meals you're going to have. So I was baffled that everyone's explaining it so techie when I really wanted the explanation of, and you said it a moment ago, that's what triggered it, is what it feels like. And so for Sean Santamore, I'll say feels with a PH, right? So I'm consumed by that experience in the building, and I depend on the technical people to layer it up ahead of time, and then the craftsmanship part of it and what we do for the people. I never like the word occupants. I hate that. People say, "Oh, the occupants. How many occupants? Occupants." I'm like, nope. People live in buildings. I that's my major focus of what that is.
Speaking of people, you're very busy in so many different organisations. I'm not sure how you get time to do everything, and a lot of that involvement that you have. Just looking through here, obviously, Passive House Accelerator and Construction Tech co-host is one of your big gigs that people will know you for. The strategic advisor, Illinois Green Alliance, policy advisor, Tiny House. We haven't even talked about tiny houses. Humans Community, and you mentioned Passive House Alliance in Chicago, and it goes on. I'm not sure how you get time for all of those activities, but what is it that drives you? What keeps you going?
So I had a great time in Chicago hosting those events with the wonderful folks from Green Tech and from Illinois Green and from FIAS, and finding the destination, finding the speakers, and finding the audience to come. Because I'm committed to the fact that we can do better, but we need more people to do better. And so what drives me for that transformation is the ability to share. And I think the construction community is uniquely involved in that. So when I learned tiling, I watched this guy do it, and then I did it. And then framing was long before that. But everything I learned was from someone else sharing it with me. And we don't have the apprenticeship and the trainings that were around in earlier years of my life that I never was a part of. And so I believe that speaking and outward sharing of what you're doing is creating the examples for others to then go farther than you. And so I carry a lot of baskets. That's all true, but it's all the same focus. It's performance driven individuals focusing on performance driven buildings, and we have to carry this beyond our community. We have to carry it in our networks, and then we take our networks back to our community. It goes both ways. It goes local to international, and then it goes international back to local. When I hear what's being done in Ireland, we need to know about that in Chicago. I marvel at this incredible LinkedIn platform and Instagram platform where I could see something being built in Brisbane or Victoria, and I could see it in Boston, and I could see it in Colorado, and I'm like, okay, I don't have to leave my house to learn what these incredible individuals are doing. I need to share their story so more people hear that story.
Mm.
And you know, the accelerator during when it came about, when they not the accelerator itself, I should say, when the global happy hour came about, it made me take more notice, and it was a destination of colleagues of various skills and experiences, welcoming and sharing. And I was beginning my own portion of that on Building Science Live, the Friday one I do with Dave. And I really feel that I can do this 7 days a week. I might have to take time out to go for a bike ride or listen to some music, but for the most part, I think there's a lot more to share, and so a couple nights a week of doing this, I often feel is not nearly enough.
Yeah, because it's so much. There's so much to learn about the physics and the science, which is awesome to hear when people come and share those aspects. There's the products and systems that are coming, being created and becoming available. But as the whole thing grows, there's just more good projects to look at, and I think they're always a bit of a crowd favourite. Is a good case study or a good project to have a look at. And I think all of the Passive House community is really used to project teams sharing their successes, but also their challenges and sometimes their stuff ups, things that they are quite happy to talk about that they would not do again or how they do it differently. And that's all part of the learning.
And depending on their character, how they bring that up is also very unique. Like someone might say, well, the challenges we had on this project, and then someone said, hey, look, we screwed up. And it took a couple weeks and a couple friends and colleagues to figure out where we screwed up. And when they're saying the word we, they know that a couple parts of that sequencing had nothing to do with them, but they're so driven that the project is successful that they put forward the we. So if you have a third party certified thing, oftentimes that's well, you did it, check. You didn't do it, it's a pass fail method, bye bye, see ya. However, in the building science performance world, it's not that way. They're like, we want you to succeed. It's going to cost us more money and time for you guys to succeed, but we want this to work. Boy, that willingness and that passion goes far beyond business, right? It's not a business person. Those are incredible gals, incredible guys saying, we're going to do this and we're going to help you do it. They insert the we in what really is a they them.
Part of your current day job is carpenter and storyteller at Tstud. For those that haven't seen it, can you give us a really quick overview of what Tstud is?
It's such an awesome group to be a part of. So if you start with the basic version of a 2x3 and a 2x4, so this is a smaller wood member. We take it and we drill it and we dowel it and we make it a 2x6 and we make it a 2x8. So using less wood, we create larger wood members. That is quite a story. And not only is it better use of wood, it happens to be 4 times stronger than the 2x6 or 2x8 that we're used to using. And it has this other magic thing that the world doesn't seem to know about. It gets rid of thermal bridges and it creates thermal breaks. And so for me, I'm like, I just love it because our 2x6 has 1.5 inch thermal break, and our 2x8 has a 2.25 thermal break, which basically means you can put continuous insulation through your stud and through your wall, not on top of your wall. And that's awesome. They have many more products and things coming out, but I'm not allowed to talk about it because we have a strategic vision in which we roll things out. But it's super awesome. And I'm a carpenter, right? So the product has to work for carpenters. It has to be a direct replacement because people in the building industry, if it's new, they say, well, I always did it this way. Well, you give a carpenter a piece of wood, he's just going to cut it, nail it, glue it, screw it. And with the Tstud, it's a no-brainer. Almost every carpenter, I don't even get a chance to talk to. I talk to the developer and the architect and the engineers that are planning it. The carpenter's like, yeah, I don't care. Just send it to me. I'll use it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's exciting stuff. And that I think allows partly if you to do all the other great stuff you're involved in, which, as I mentioned before, people can catch you every week on the Passive House Accelerator and the Tech Tuesday. And also Fridays, you on the, or is it Thursdays? I get my days confused because everything's a day out for me.
Right. So when you're on Saturday, I'm on Friday morning, right?
That's right.
And,
so you're doing the beer, building science and beers.
Building Science Friday live.
So much great stuff going on.
It's a fun time. My favorite part about the construction tech is at the end of the show when we're all relaxed, we're all at the same frequency, and then we have a laugh and we have everyone say, Passive House Accelerator, construction tech, technical technique, technology. It's so fun because it's all when you know, it's like when you were a kid, everyone's on the same wavelength, enjoying the same thing. And I if I could find another group in construction that enjoys what they do that much, I'd be a part of that group too.
Yeah, they are quite amazing. I have been because it's in the mid morning. Oftentimes for me here, I jump on, get the short sharp main presentation, then some of the Q&A. But sometimes I'll log back on and an hour's gone by and everyone's still there hanging out, having a good time. But also sometimes deep diving into some really technical, grunty issues as well, which is having fun, but some really good learning going on and some great sharing of knowledge.
That's exactly it, Matthew. The contribution of the audience. I mean, you use the word audience because that's just part of our language, but it's not an audience, it's a group. And the contribution, that's the sharing, right? So the presenter learns from the group and the group learns from the presenter. And it sure makes the work for Zach and Kevin and Shannon and Sean and Michael and myself a lot easier because everyone is on the same page. And that's what you want to inspire. You want to inspire community. And when community is transforming things, that's a momentum. That's physics in and of itself, full motion.
So where to from here for you, Mark? What do you see in the next, say, 12 months and pushing out beyond that next 3 years? What do you see for yourself and what do you see for Passive House?
Well, I've been wrong before. I thought all those years ago that everything was going to be built this way. And clearly I haven't spoken loud enough and we haven't reached enough ears. or perhaps some of our messaging needs to be retailored. So I think Passive House has a large percentage of existing buildings to go for as a community, and I think we should embrace it as the future code for all new buildings, regardless of whether you call it Passive House or not. It's the principles to follow. And for myself, I'm gonna pick off people on Instagram that are doing great things. I'm gonna learn from them, and I'm gonna tell them what I know. I'm gonna post a whole ton of stuff on LinkedIn so that more people are connected. And I also wanna change the way we do trade shows in our industry. I don't want to come into a city, erect booths, and leave. I want to come into a city and transform buildings and then do that to another city. We don't need booths. The construction industry has no use for a booth. We have awesome materials, incredible workforce, a lot of training to do, and the best tools on the planet come from the construction industry. So I'm out to transform how we get together and what we do when we get together. And I need a lot more people to have that same belief.
Well, I think you're surrounded by some good people and in a good community, which is great, which others are very welcome to be part of if they're not already as well. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, you have come along to one of the PHAccelerator sessions. But if you haven't, then definitely come along and check them out because they're a lot of fun and also really great learning as well and inspiring. Some amazing stuff. And it's all available as well, so you can catch up on old episodes on the channels there as well. You mentioned LinkedIn. That's probably a good place for people to connect with you, and Instagram as well. And they can check out Tstud and all the various other things that you're involved in there. So thank you very much for today, but thank you more for all the great work that you've done over the last couple of decades, and particularly in the Passive House community. It is because of people like you, I think, that are making the change and spreading the word, not just loudly, but also the quality of that communication with networks as well, encouraging others. So thank you.
And that was my chat with Mark. Always a fun guy to hang out with. Loves to talk and loves to talk about Passive House. Zach, you and Mark go back a little way.
We do. Well, I've mainly been getting to know Mark through the Accelerator, which has been just a pleasure. And I did not know his history. And so these interviews where we get to learn about, like the one that just happened with Sean and now this one with Mark, they're really great, super fun.
Gotta get the backstory.
Yeah.
Every superhero has one.
No kidding. And the kind of tactile, physical, hands in the chemicals, hands on the lumber connection to sustainable building is like, that's intense. And yeah, it's what a way to what a way to be brought up into this world of sustainable construction.
Yeah, I really love hearing from builders, and I had this experience with Sean as well. People who have had that time on a building site and just working around other builders, but also with wood and learning about wood, what it's capable of, its beauty, its the challenges involved. It just adds a whole another dimension. And I also really value people who have had that practical experience, but then gone on to study and learn and deep dive into some pretty full-on physics of building science and then come out the other end and ultimately end up at Passive House.
Yeah, no, it's a great combination of background and skills. I think one of the superpowers that Mark has as well is he's a master connector. And you heard that in his, describing his work when he was those early days of being a supplier of high performance building materials or eco building materials, and the way that he was working with his friends then to become installers and business, to business people to kind of build this cottage industry of green building. It was the way that I was interpreting that. You see that there. And then, I mean, he alluded to the platforms of LinkedIn and Instagram, but particularly LinkedIn. I mean, he's got a massive LinkedIn network, where he's sharing stories and events and things. He's like this one man PR machine around all this.
And it's PR for Passive House. It's not about himself. He's not very egotistical. He's just really passionate about getting the word out there. And the other thing that we didn't come up in this interview, but I know from working with people and listening to people like Mark, they have a great talent for describing things that just anyone can understand, because some of the concepts that we deal with Passive House can be quite technical, and that's a big part of the Tech Tuesday is to deep dive into those and really look at some of the applied solutions. But it's quite good having people to step back and say, well, what does this mean in the real world for architects, designers, or even homeowners and people who are inside buildings? And that was another thing that Mark has a really great focus on is people.
Yeah, that metaphor about the difference between describing the cockpit of the airplane compared to describing the beaches and the food that you're going to get to enjoy after because of the plane ride. It was I think a good one. That was powerful.
So lots of places you can see Mark in action, be part of the community. I'm sure a lot of our audience already know or have heard and seen him fairly regularly. But like you say, definitely connect with him on LinkedIn. Check out all his activities online. The YouTube channel stuff is all there, all the Friday Building Science Live, plus all of our happy hour episodes and the Tech Tuesdays. They're all available. Are they not on the Accelerator page, Zach?
They sure are. Yes, that's right. You can find the happy hour videos on the happy hour page, construction tech videos on the construction tech page, or you can go to the video page and do all sorts of filtering for different kinds of videos. So much content. Lots going on.
There is lots going on. What else have we got happening coming up?
We are in the midst of a bunch of bonus episodes that are basically these short interviews from the North American Passive House Networks conference, Passive House for All, that happened in June, just last month. So for folks who are interested in hearing from different leaders and practitioners and interesting folks, please check those bonus episodes out of the podcast. And then tomorrow on Construction Tech Tuesday, July 28th. So that's actually Wednesday for you, Matthew. We have a return of Gary Klein. So this is Gary Klein part 2. And so he blew everybody's minds with the potential power of efficient design of domestic hot water systems, and really kind of a step change in the sizing of systems and the efficiency of systems. So he's going to dive deeper into that with everybody on Construction Tech coming up. And then our Global Passive House Happy Hour will feature University of Arizona architecture students presenting about their solar decathlon projects. We're wrapping up July for Construction Tech and Global Passive House Happy Hour, and we're actually taking August, and we're not going to have Construction Tech and Happy Hour. We're going to gear up for the fall programming. So we'll continue to do the podcast during August, but we're going to give the hosts and presenters a little bit of a break, let everybody recharge and come back with some great programming that we'll share soon in the fall.
All right. Well, thank you very much to all of you for listening. If you do enjoy this podcast, then we'd love it if you could rate and review wherever you listen. And also don't forget to tell your friends, colleagues about the show, and also those other great resources that are available on the Passive House Accelerator website. There's something for everyone there. If they're just starting on their Passive House journey, just starting to learn about what's going on, or if they want some really crunchy answers to some pretty technical questions, then there's plenty of that too. So something for everyone. Thanks a lot, Zach.
Thank you, Matthew.
We'll catch you again next week on the Passive House Accelerator.